Hi, I'm Sarah Hattula. This is my third speech, and I'm going to be talking about conservation through hunting. Our ecosystem in the Pacific Northwest is deemed as one of the most biodiverse and unique terrestrial areas in the whole world. This is according to biologist Lauren Anderson, working in the Oregon Wild Pacific Northwest Research Station. Now, when I asked the audience about the national parks and where they've been, 80% of you said that you have visited one. And at least 60% of the national parks you have listed have been in the Pacific Northwest. What if I told you that these parks wouldn't have existed without a tree hugger and a hunter? I'm referring to John Muir and President Theodore Roosevelt. According to Theodore Roosevelt, there can be nothing in the world more beautiful. Our people should see to it that they are preserved for their children and their children's children forever with their majestic beauty all unmarred. Their children's children. So he was thinking that these need to last for a long time. I've been hunting since I was first able to pass hunter's ed, which is the age of 8. Since then, I've provided over 400 pounds of meat for my family to eat, and sometimes that was the only thing we had left in the freezer to eat. I don't know where we'd be today. Since then, I've been working for Idaho Fish and Game for almost a year, and I've been certified under them to sell tags and licenses at my current work at Black Sheep. That is why I'm extremely invested in this topic, because it's been a constant reminder of the survival my family had to undergo over the past 11 years. And I feel like it is my job to help share the information I have learned over the years to you guys. Hunting is the best way to conserve our animals in the Pacific Northwest, excluding endangered species. And everyone needs to do their part to conserve the rare biodiversity that our forests have up here. Today, I will be addressing the lack of hunters over the past 2 decades and what that's done to our ecosystem, how it is physically and financially beneficial to hunt and to donate to organizations, including federal and private ones. And finally, I will discuss the consequences that will occur if no increase in action is taking place. There has been a steady decrease of hunters for the past 20 years. Only 4% of our population hunts, and a large portion of funding for our conservation and preservation actually comes from the tags and licenses that we sell. That's what funds our national parks. By purchasing these tags and licenses, purchasing firearms and ammo, you are helping do your part by preserving the parks. In 1937, there was a Federal Aid and Wildlife Restoration Act approved by the second cousin of Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. This was due to the decrease in the amount of hunters, and they already saw to it that they needed to have some other way to help fund these national parks and keep them maintained and keep the animal population steady. So they added a tax on firearms and ammo, which now there's 11% tax on all firearms and ammo purchases that goes directly to the federal government, who ends up funding and distributing through our national parks all around the world, or all around the US, sorry. Now we can see that lately, because of the decrease in hunters, most of their funding relies on those people who buy ammo and firearms. But because of the recent protests and the recent fights against the Second Amendment, we can see that that is kind of an unreliable source. So that states another issue of why our funding has gone down, and how come not only the fact that the loss in amount of hunters has affected us, but it's also the amount of people who are willing to purchase firearms. Another factor that's contributing to the lack of hunting is baby boomers, surprisingly. Over 1/3 of hunters in the US are baby boomers, and they are kind of reaching an age where they don't hunt as much as they used to, and they don't need it as much as they used to. According to Andrew Moore, a journalist at College of Natural Resources, without these baby boomers, we're going to see an insane decrease, an exponential decrease in the amount of hunting done every year. Usually a person up here right now, they get about 1 tag for a deer and 1 tag for an elk. They have seen it spike down so low that it has caused over 15 tags to be sold for 1 deer for 1 person. So that's 15 deer for 1 person. So there's a few solutions that I'm going to provide for you today. In Idaho, we have to maintain over 205 species. Now there's more species in that than Idaho, obviously, but those are 205 species that needs our direct watching and our direct regulations. By hunting and participating in half of the federal funding for conservation and preservation, you can help out by doing your part by getting a hunting passport. Now what that is, when I asked the majority of you why you don't go hunting, it's because you said you didn't have anyone to go with and you didn't know anyone who would take you. Well, if you go into Idaho Fish and Game or even just a distributor like Black Sheep where I work, you're able to get a hunting passport. Now, what that is it helps you try out hunting without actually having to spend any time and money into it other than just going out there and trying it. It gives you a tag and you are able to go with someone without participating in hunter's education or buying, any kind of licensing or permits to just try it out to see if you like it. You can ask any Idaho Fish and Game officer if they'd like to go with you, and I'm sure they'd be happy to participate, especially since the needs of hunting and hunters has gone down. Another thing you can do to help out is elect Idaho leaders who really care about conservation and really have a deep understanding of what needs to happen in order to help preserve our national parks. An example of this is our current governor, Brad Little, recently signed an act to decrease the population of wolves. This was because there was a big push by farmers saying that the wolf population, since they've been introduced, has been really affecting their output of cattle because they're attacking the cattle. The only issue with this is that when we introduced them, it was because the elk population was spiked up. Now, since we have maintained the elk population by adding wolves, and now we are going to be killing 90% of them, so they are now considered a varmint, like a coyote, where you can just shoot them if you have a hunting license. You don't need any kind of tags or permits. This is going to cause the elk population to skyrocket. They're going to hit their carrying capacity, and it's going to end up plummeting, meaning that there are going to be no elk left, meaning that people like my family who rely on that elk meat every year cannot feed themselves. Another way you can help is by donating to federal and private organizations. There are different people like WWF, there's Idaho Fish and Game, there's other fish and game regions for different states that you can provide to. Also just visiting national parks. If you visit a national park, or even if you go camping and you pay for a camping spot, you are donating and giving money to fund towards those animals that we care so much about. So, why is this important? Why does it even matter? Who cares about this? First of all, if we don't care about this, what's going to end up happening to the population, majority of the animals, not including predators, is that they're going to skyrocket. Now, at first, it sounds like a kind of good thing. There's a lot of deer. That sounds pretty good, but actually it's not. It's really bad for the environment around them, including the different plants they're actually eating. So what's going to be happening is they're going to be eating all the plants and their carrying capacity, which is their group they're surviving in. And then they're going to end up dying off because disease spreads because of the high population, and there's going to be no food for them left. Once they die off, that means all the predators that relied on eating them, or even all of the scavengers that relied on feeding off of their carcasses, are going to end up dying too. This leads to the extinction of predators in that area, or even just in general, since grizzly bears are already endangered. And then this ends up leading to disease that can be spread to humans, making the area that these high populations were condensed into impossible for us to live in. An example of a disease is Lyme's disease. So you can see on this black bear right on this PowerPoint, has a bunch of ticks all over it. That's how Lyme's disease is spread. It transfers blood through different animals, and it can actually be transferred to humans. If you go on a hike and get a tick that has Lyme's disease, it can be transferred into you. Another disease that we see quite often that is spread is mange, which is a skin disease that a lot of wolves and predators get, animals with fur usually. And it's really gross. It makes them super contagious and die off really easily. And the one that's recently come out and has been brought back into Idaho is chronic waste disease. So Idaho Fish and Game just released another tag to be able to get a census of how much this disease is spread. Since they did find a couple deer in units 16 and 14 of Idaho, which is in central Idaho, that did have this disease. It makes them lethargic, not being able to retain water, therefore they're starving themselves. Another word for it is zombie deer. So obviously none of that sounds pretty good. So to kind of sum it all up, guys, this is really important for not only the animals, but for us as well. By having these population spikes, it is really, really impacting the people who are relying on that food. And economically speaking, it, impacts the areas that we are able to live in. I know that when I like going out on a hike, I like being able to see the diverse trees and the different types of animals and insects flying all around. I wouldn't really enjoy walking around the tundra with 3 or 4 plants every other, step. So make sure you guys do your part in order to, maintain this beautiful area that we live in. Make sure that you really take it all in and appreciate it as much as I do, and as much as I know the majority of us do here in Coeur d'Alene. Without your help, these animals can really, fall short and get the short end of the stick in the end of this. And then it later falls into us. So please, please do your part. To kind of sum it all up, the main points that I went over were, let me get back to it, sorry. Sorry about that. Where how the lack of hunters of the past 2 decades have really impacted us. How it is physically and financially beneficial for you to donate to organizations and to hunt. And finally, how the consequences and what consequences would occur if no regulation was taken in place. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and hopefully you do your part.